This is the Nobel Podcast, where we talk about how to optimize your technology, life, and mind. We're joined by special operations veterans, entrepreneurs, investors, and others who have overcome difficulty to make it to the top of their craft by staying in the fight. My name is Sam Alaimo. This is the Nobel Podcast. I'm here with Rob Huberty, and we also have with us today Mike Lowinder. Mike, welcome.
Thank you.
We'll dive right in. Where did you grow up, Mike?
Grew up in South Jersey. Parents divorced when I was 2. Dad remarried when I was 4. So mom always lived in South Jersey. Grew up in Marlton, right near Cherry Hill. It's not far from here. And then dad and stepmom moved around. Started in Jersey, moved to PA, ended up in Texas, spent time in Ohio. But I always find my ground in Jersey.
Were you a military family?
No, dad moved around. He worked for Boeing and then moved around to other companies. Ended up working for Bell Helicopter, Eaton, a couple other different engineering companies. So that was the base of him moving around.
So childhood, does it look like Jersey Shore? Were you more rural? Like, what was your childhood like?
A lot of Jersey Shore. Marlton's a pretty dense place with Cherry Hill. A lot going on, pretty busy. So very much a busy suburb area. We'd spend summers at the Jersey Shore. My dad traveling around and living in different locations. I spent some summers going back and forth where they lived locally. And then when my dad moved to Texas, when I went to high school, I spent every summer in Texas, spent 10 to 12 weeks there in the Dallas area.
What did you get into in Texas?
Dad lived locally to the Marlton area in Jersey or PA until I was in 8th grade. And then in 8th grade, he took a job in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. And at that time, he asked me to go move with him. I have 2 older sisters, and they were already later in high school or in college where it didn't really make an impact on them to move. But my dad being the biggest impact in my life really made me make the decision, or wanted me to make that decision of staying in Jersey to go through high school or moving to Texas with him. And that summer going into freshman year of high school, I had to make that decision. That was a tough summer, just going back and forth, trying to make that decision. Ended up spending time in Texas and got a feel for it. And growing up in Jersey my whole life and then trying to make that decision.
2 different worlds.
Yeah. And at 14 years old. And it was tough. It was really tough. I spent 6 to 10 weeks down there, something around there, trying to feel it out, see if it was right for me. And I made the commitment to my parents of, yes, I'm going to move to Texas. And then a couple weeks went by. And then eventually I told my dad, look, I really can't do this. I can't move to Texas. I need to stay in Jersey for high school. And that was a really tough moment. And the relationship with my parents and in my life, and ended up going to high school in Jersey the rest of the time and splitting time back and forth in Texas. So in the summers, I'd go to Texas. I try to get involved in different activities and things going on, but I really just couldn't get into the culture or get into doing things. I think I was a little bit more of a victim mentality back then of, why am I down here? Why am I not spending summers with my Jersey friends? And every summer was a little bit of a push and pull with my parents because they would try to convince me to go to high school in Texas. I even eventually did try Texas high school for 2 weeks, ended up going right back to Jersey. So a lot going on with the Texas experience. I love Texas. I've been there a lot and I've been there a lot since, but that's the biggest memory with me in Texas and all the time I spent there.
Yeah, there's this pull between the Northeast and the South there. What's maybe like the most vivid memory you have from childhood? Like, what stands out the most? What was maybe like the defining feature of your childhood?
I think one was that moment for sure of trying to make that decision, being 14 years old and felt like I had a lot of pressure on me to make that decision, and the impact it made my relationship with my parents, which overall, long-term, very happy of how everything worked out, and, very strong relationship with my parents, and they're incredible people. And I think another thing that kind of led to a lot of times during childhood having not as much confidence was, I think I was a definition of the average athlete because I played travel sports, played soccer and basketball mainly. And I was always the best player on the B team or the worst player on the A team. And for basketball and soccer, my whole life, I was back and forth between those. And I think that actually hurt my confidence in a lot of ways because in soccer, I would play up and I mainly played on the better team in our town, but was always riding the bench or not getting playing time. And gotten, me and my parents, tough time with coaching and going through that experience growing up that with the combination of making that decision and feeling like at times I made the wrong decision or letting people down led to a lot of, hurt and confidence growing up. And I think those made a lot of impact me on how I've, become and grown into the, adult, I guess, that I am today. So
You were more into the Jersey Shore than Friday Night Lights.
more into the Jersey Shore than Friday Night Lights for sure. Definitely.
So with all this bouncing around and like this internal turmoil, I know who you are now, and I always ask this question because I want to compare it to who you were then.
Mm-hmm.
You obviously played sports, but did you ever get into trouble?
Not really. I had a couple weird run-ins where I became friends with people that probably weren't the best or just doing stupid stuff around the neighborhood. I remember one time we threw a stink bomb at someone's front yard and I felt like a terrible person after that and realized I realized I made the wrong decision.
No handcuffs and mugshots.
Yeah, no handcuffs, a cop pulling up to my house. That's about it. A couple times where in our neighborhood, we would pile the snows during a snowstorm so cars couldn't go through one of the neighborhood roads. Yeah, and then cops coming through and then us running away. Nothing above that. Luckily stayed away from some like the bad influence stuff, but overall felt like I had a good head on my shoulders, had really good influence from my parents. I feel like I had a really good sense of right and wrong, but at the same time, I feel like I didn't have as much confidence and I didn't do things that instilled confidence in me and felt like that either had to rely on my parents for that or, for that direction. And I couldn't make a lot of those decisions or assumptions of what is right by myself. It really was just leaning on my parents.
So given all that, what was the earliest memory you have of wanting to become a Marine Corps officer?
It's a little bit of a story for sure.
Let's hit it.
Never had the intention of joining the military. Never was something that I was really exposed to. Weird enough, I have 3 grandfathers and all 3 joined the military. All 3 of my grandfathers were in the military, but unique experiences. One grandfather, Air Force, 1 Navy, 1 Army. Very unique. Didn't spend a lot of time. Didn't ever talk about it.
They ever go to war?
None of them went overseas. So never really had any exposure to that. And really never, I wouldn't say was an option. Through my childhood and through in high school, the idea for me was always to go to engineering school and be an engineer. My dad was an engineer, really, really successful engineer, and really worked really, really hard and has continued to work really, really hard his whole life. And that's really what the plan was for me and what I always thought was my path. Went to Penn State for engineering school, started there freshman year, ended up joining fraternity. During my pledging phase, during that experience, I had another moment where a lot of my confidence was broken, where we had a pledging hazing incident that happened that led me to being in the hospital for a couple days. Really tough experience for me, for my confidence. I felt bad and terrible about the entire thing.
I didn't actually go to college. Like I did it online while I was in the military. Yeah. So I know nothing about the fraternity lifestyle. You're saying that the hazing was so bad it put you in the fucking hospital?
I wouldn't say that. I don't want to perceive it like that. It was a tough experience and it was hazing that was going on. For sure, it's stuff that probably should not have happened. But at the same time...
So Penn State's pretty notorious.
That's part of it.
Right. And I don't think that there's blame on Penn State particularly, but that is a big party school. I went to Arizona, and I was also in a fraternity. Big party school. We had shared stories about this. We've talked about this a lot. But when we compared stories, yours was, I believe, crossing the line. Mm-hmm. So what is crossing the line in comparison to my experience?
I don't want to get into, obviously, the entire pledge experience. It was a bunch of physical activity that we did. I was a cross-country runner in high school. I ended up quitting soccer and other sports to focus on cross-country and track. I was 5'7", 130 pounds going into freshman year of college. I was pretty small. I never had worked out my upper body or lower body on intense workouts probably to that much in my life at that time. And we just went through some type of event that included doing a lot of physical activity. Ended up me getting rhabdomyolysis, rhabdo. Yeah. Ended up urinating dark colors. Noticed that after a couple days after the event happened. And, it was something that I was very much trying to keep under tone and I didn't want to bring up, but it got to the point where I really had to check myself in. And then through word of mouth, it got out that it happened through the frat. And after that, I felt absolutely terrible because I became the kid that quote unquote died from hazing and all the jokes you can imagine through social media.
Except Penn State's had a bunch of people die.
They have.
Historically.
They have.
So there's going to be a reaction to it. You're not supposed to die at school.
Right. And I felt terrible of the position it put in the guys in the frat in general, because all really, really great dudes. I truly believe that they're just doing what they have been done to them, and not saying that's okay. That's just the way it was. Right. And I felt terrible. My confidence really plummeted in that moment.
So you got destroyed, and then you felt bad about it afterwards.
I did, but I really felt like in the way of, the impact the guys in my pledge class at that time and ruining, quote unquote, their experience. At least that's the way I felt, and ruining the whole process and what they feel like they had built up, the reputation and the people they had in that frat and the impact it made. And in that time, right, big picture now, you're going to look at that. Of course, you got hurt. You could do XYZ thing. You could make them feel really bad about it. But I truly felt like I let a lot of people down, and I was crushed, and it crushed my confidence. I wanted to transfer from Penn State. I didn't want to be there. My parents, they are so incredible, and they supported me. Of course, they were very reactionary at first of, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, and had a lot of conversation with them. They came to me and they understand where I was and what I didn't want to do, and the impact I want to make going forward. So from that point, the next year, sophomore year, a lot of things changed. Ended up joining the frat still, getting in, and being hopefully one part of the change, and feeling like I had a big chip in my shoulder. Right, like you said, the fraternity life at a big state school. In the moment, it means a lot. It feels like it means everything, and it definitely shouldn't, but it felt like that was what life was there. And you felt like once you're in it, you had to be a part of it. And, through sophomore and the rest of college, I had an awesome experience. I'm super grateful. There were a lot of times for sure that I still had a lot of lacking confidence. There's going to be older people who made fun of me or made comments and things going online. But I think in the combination of couple of those things from childhood, it just, again, I lacked a lot of confidence in myself and what I could do and my ability. And I think at that point, as I started getting more confidence at the end of that sophomore year, junior year, around when I turned 20, that time is I felt like I needed to get an edge. I needed to do something that was going to make me stand out and feel like I can make an impact somewhere else. And I was doing engineering. I wasn't doing great in engineering school either. And though, I was making it through the coursework, I feel like I was just getting by and it wasn't making a good impact on me. And then at some point during my junior year, I just had the insight that I want to join the military. This feels like something I can go prove myself, and something that instead of going to go do a normal engineering job, that I could go do. And I started having that conversation around junior year. And then I interned in Piney Flats, Tennessee, near Johnson City, Tennessee, kind of middle of nowhere, during the summer for my senior year. And while there, I was interning, and I really realized I do not want to be a full-time engineer. This is not for me. I was working in a manufacturing facility, and for me, very much respect what they were doing, but I just felt like it wasn't where I was supposed to be. And so that summer, I started talking to different recruiters. I ended up talking to a Navy recruiter because in my brain, having really still no exposure to the military, Navy just made sense. It made sense for me. I don't know why for whatever reason, that's where I felt like I needed to be. And so I went to the Navy recruiter and met a recruiter there. I actually took the ASVAB. I didn't do that great on it, to be honest. I was really close to signing the dotted line to go enlist in the Navy Reserves. Paperwork was drawn up. I was right there. And I hid it from my parents a little bit. I mentioned it, but that I was going to do this, and I was interested in this for 6 months or so. But they didn't truly believe me until I actually was going to go ahead and move forward with it. And then I was very close, and I called my dad and I said, look, I'm thinking about going to go do this. And he's, don't do it. Go try to be an officer. You're already 3 years through college. Go try to be, finish college and then go in. And I had no understanding of what the difference between officer and enlisted was. I really had no exposure. And my dad worked at Boeing for 25 years, worked at Bell Helicopter for 5 years. He had a lot of exposure to military personnel. He worked on the Chinook. He worked on the B-22, did some really incredible and awesome work there. And so that he was connected with high-ranking former officers. And so very thankful he was able to connect me with a couple. I had really good, insightful conversations of like the understanding of what an officer and enlisted was and what I should go try to do. And I decided, all right, I'm going to go try to be an officer. And for me, I feel my confidence started growing. I felt like I had something that I really wanted to go after. And to me, at that point, I decided I want to go try to be what I thought was the best and join the Marine Corps. So I decided I'm going to go try to be a Marine officer. Went back to my senior year at Penn State, went through the OSO, the officer candidate.
So you didn't do the OCS between junior and senior year?
No, I did it after. I did it after senior year. The process to get accepted to OCS, right? So you have to go through. You have to get an application. They look at everything, where you went to college, your GPA, your major, and then you take PFT scores. You get letters of recommendation, and that process took pretty much my entire senior year. At the same time, during my senior year, having conversations with my parents about it, I actually was still applying for normal jobs because I didn't know if I was going to get accepted. I got a job offer with Amazon. And at the time, knowing what Amazon was and what it was looking like to be, having the conversation with my parents, they were like, look, you can do the reserves and do both. If you're really serious about this, why don't you accept the Amazon job and then also go join the reserves, and you can do both. And we had that agreement. I agreed to that. I thought that was, after thinking it through, the best thing for me as well. And so I made my contract. I flipped my contract to a reserve contract before actually going to OCS. So through senior year, at the very end, got accepted to Marine OCS, asked Amazon, which they actually didn't have to because I wasn't an employee yet.
Let's pause there. I'm curious about this. So like you have like what some people would call like the noble art of self-flagellation. So you beat the hell out of yourself your whole life. You talked about, when Rob was hinting about this earlier, you talked about your conundrum between Jersey and Texas and how you felt like you were playing the victim. And then you keep talking about the guilt you felt with your parents. You talked about the guilt you felt at the fraternity, even though that obviously wasn't your fault. And it just seems like a great outcome that you built yourself. You beat yourself with like almost too much humility and built yourself into becoming a Marine officer when you were just riddled with doubt before that. Like, to me, that's a great way to put a bow on it.
I do appreciate that, but I feel like I need to earn it every day. I really do. I really feel like I haven't done anything in this world and I want to make an impact. And I know I have done good things and I'm doing good things and continue to, but something around that when I was 20 or 21 really sparked me of, I really want to go attack every day and I want to earn it every day, and I haven't done it yet.
So I want to jump in here. The one is physicality. So you said you're like Franco Columbu, you're yoked and you can go run still like a deer. He ran, 3-hour marathon in the middle of like being yoked. You said that, you get rhabdo. At what point did you change like your body transformation? Because like you were a yoked dude. When did that happen?
So I never lifted weights in high school, in the beginning of college, and freshman, sophomore year, as I mentioned, didn't have a lot of confidence and such, right? Started building a little bit more confidence and becoming more friends with some of the guys in the fraternity that are a little bigger. Go to an internship before junior year, and the guy that I got introduced online, like an Instagram guy, an influencer, Corey Gregory. To me, I owe a lot to that dude and how he goes about training. It's not the first person to come up with it, but the Squat Every Day program, and how you squat every day, it builds testosterone, it breaks down muscles constantly. And
sorry, what was the timeline again? When was this?
It was junior year of college, right before junior year of college. So that's summer. So I was 20 years old, and around 2014, and the Squat Every Day program, he really started promoting it, and I started doing that. And so you would go to the gym and, you're going to go do arm day, do shoulder day, whatever. The first thing you do when you go in is you go squat, and you squat something heavy-ish. So you squat heavy, or you squat 5 reps of, your 90% max or something to that nature, and you over time build. And that changed my body, completely changed.
Did that change your mentality too? Did one follow the other? because you said, very tough freshman year, a positive sophomore year, by the way it sounds, and you said you made that choice your junior year to experience it. Were those linked?
Definitely.
One after the other. Which one was after?
Definitely, I think started building the confidence in working out, getting a lot bigger, getting a lot stronger. Maybe it built a lot more testosterone in my body, and it gave me that confidence. And by that, and I saw a big change. I gained 15 pounds in 6 weeks. It completely changed me. I went from 137 to 155-ish.
Did it impact your running, or were you able to maintain?
I still maintain that fitness, but I still ran. Actually, when I was going for OCS and you had to run the PFT, I ran the 3 mile in 16:04.
Oh my God.
So I ran, I could run, and I had that cross country. I had that cross country running ability in me still, and I was just able to be a hybrid athlete at that time. Mm. And that's what inspired me and the fitness shape I wanted to be in. And that definitely gave me confidence and the thoughts of I can go do this too. It actually seemed real that I could go try to be in the military and go try to join.
Do you still squat every day?
I don't. I've changed it. I'm more running focused for one, and two, my life, the way I work out, just not set up to be squatting. I do squat. I squat about a 100-pound bar. I have dumbbells with a bar that I attach, and I just squat that every day with about 100, 110 pounds. I do lunges. Gregory, he changed his program a couple times to lunge every day and such too. So I'll lunge for 8 minutes standing every day. But I feel that you have to do legs every day. I've never had a leg day. I just do legs every day. And I feel like that is truly what changed my body and my mentality.
Do you riddle your day with little workouts, or do you have one time a workout?
I'm an all workout at once kind of guy. When I was training for the marathon last year, I would go run for however long I needed to, an hour or 2 hours, whatever, and then go lift immediately after. And even though you're kind of miserable and tired, I'd rather bang it all at once because I want the rest of my day to do all the things else I have to do. And I need that sense of I have that accomplishment. I worked out. I can go do whatever else. Like the rest of the day is free. I can go do whatever.
What's your program look like right now?
Right now, it's just a mix of running and lifting. I'm doing that Rocky 50K, which is the 31-mile race in Philly. And it's a no sign up, no entry fee. So I'm just going to start training for that and running there. Next year, I want to go try to qualify for the Boston Marathon. So I'm going to actually go into that more running focused. But right now, maintaining, kind of getting ready for probably 6 months from now when I go all in on that goal.
I know, Rob, you know a lot about marathons. I don't know much about it. So when you're running for hours at a time, do you have music in, or are you just kind of meditating and flowing with your breath that whole time?
Run and audiobooks, listening. I'm in this phase now in life where there's not enough hours in the day. I'm realizing that. And I do want to continue to learn. I do want to continue to better myself. And I feel like music sometimes is too much of a cheat on that. And so it's hard. Not every workout, every run, you can go listen to an audiobook or an informative podcast where you feel like that. But I do try to take advantage of that time. I do try to take the advantage of the little time where I can try to better myself mentally too. And so that's what I try to do, but it's always going to differ, right? It's whatever I feel like I need that day.
I think running is weird, and I'm more of a music person than a podcast person. Like I really like to listen to music, but when you run, two things happen with music. You get bored of the music, and particularly if you listen to a similar kind of soundtrack, it actually makes me run too fast. So one of the biggest thing when you're doing endurance stuff is that you run faster than you're supposed to. Your heart rate doesn't build, particularly for distance stuff. Mm-hmm. And so kind of a cheat code on the longer runs, you're supposed to run like 3 minutes per mile slower on long runs than it's very dramatic, the difference. And I got better at running when I ran slower. And if you listen to podcasts, you tend to slow down rather than higher beats per minute music. And when I'm marathon training, I like to save a podcast for like the Sunday slow run.
Yeah, definitely
the longer distance one. But also listening to podcasts too much kind of gets boring too. So you always have to switch. Every now and again, you just want to hear yourself breathe too.
Gotta keep it fresh.
Yeah. Keep fresh.
Keep fresh. Let's go to OCS, because like even when I was a kid, I debated between going enlisted SEAL and going officer Marine Corps, just because the marketing was so good. The marketing for Marine Corps is awesome.
It's incredible.
What I read about recruiters are the best. The officer recruiters for the Marines are the best.
Yeah. They were really good. Yeah. My OSO, he was really good too.
Let's talk about OCS. Like just from the outside looking at it, looks like a great fucking program. What was it like training for it? And then what was it like when it kicked off?
Training for it, I was so excited when I finally got accepted. I spent my whole senior year being really focused on that goal, and getting accepted was awesome. And I felt like I was ready. I ran a lot. The one thing I definitely didn't do enough of, I got introduced to pull-ups my senior year of college. I never really had done pull-ups. I know. I never, because I only been lifting at that point for probably about a year or so.
You're great at them now, right? How many can you rep out right now?
I mean, I could probably, at this second, I could probably do 25 to 26.
So that's super
maybe.
abnormal for people who don't know. Like that's an incredible amount of pull-up endurance.
I do. You're pretty yoked too. So like the bigger you are, the harder. I mean, you have a good balance, but the more you weigh, the harder.
The more pull-ups you do, the better you get.
So what were your pull-ups going into OCS?
My pull-up was 16, which was tough. So at that time, the Marine Corps standard for maxing was 20, regardless of age group or time in service. It was always 20. And so I think I maybe had gotten 17 once, but I really was sticking to around 16, 17. But could do the crunches, and was really good at the run. Got prepped, got to OCS, definitely a culture shock for sure.
What was day one like? What was the first thought that went through your head?
What the hell did I do?
Yeah.
What, I did this like everybody else? What? Now OCS,
huge mistake.
OCS is very different from recruit training, right? Marine Corps recruit training. Very different, right? There's that officershipness that they're trying to instill with you. Though there's the runaround and there's the screaming and all that. The physical remediation that they do, there was not nearly as much of that. But
no rhabdo.
But the pressure felt way higher. It felt way higher because they're actually grading you on your ability to make decisions, to be under stress. You actually had to study for tests and pass them. And not all the tests were that easy. And you had to forego sleep to do that. You had to pull more firewatch. So there was that. But I think the one thing about OCS is you actually get 1 day off the last 7 weeks. You get like a 12 to 24 hour period off. So you actually got to feel normal life. And I think that's part of it too. They wanted you to keep maybe more of that leadership and officership and be able to think clearly and not get so warped in what's going on, and be able to really assess your ability to be a leader. Maybe that's it, or maybe I'm just blowing smoke. That was an interesting experience, but I felt like I belonged. I got a lot of respect from my peers there. I was one of the most physically in shape. Still wasn't great at pull-ups, but everything else I felt like I was pretty strong at.
That's still pretty good.
Yeah.
Pull-ups are pretty good.
Yeah, they're decent, right?
Above average.
And I was still running in the 16, 17 minutes for the 3 miles.
Fast.
Yeah,
that gave me a lot of confidence. So did the 10-week program right after college. So I graduated college beginning of May, and I went around May 28th, 29th-ish for OCS. Did the 10 weeks. Because I was doing that program, I went right into TBS in the basic school. And that's a 6-month basic officer program that they have Marine officers go through. So during that time,
everyone, regardless, pilot, artillery, infantry, doesn't matter.
Every Marine officer goes to TBS. So
did you actually know what you were going to do in the Marine Corps?
No. So again, no exposure to the military. I thought everybody was just infantry, or everybody was around the same thing.
Riflemen first, exactly. They are, aren't they?
Right.
That's what they tell you.
And that's the mentality I had. I had a tough time at TBS. It was one of those things where I felt like I climbed a little bit of a mountain.
It's supposed to be. I think like that one's one of the more challenging ones, right?
Tough for me, though. I ended up breaking up with my college girlfriend at that time, and right after I graduated OCS, and that really hurt my experience with TBS. And I felt like at the beginning, again, I became a Marine, felt really strong about it, and again, felt like I made an incredible accomplishment. I wrote the wrongs of what happened in the fraternity, and I really felt really confident, really strong myself. And then 3-4 weeks in the TBS, go through this tough breakup, and it really affected me through the first, 4 or 5 months of TBS. I felt like I performed really well in OCS, and then through TBS, I felt like I was just going through the motions. On the weekends, I was being kind of an asshole and just driving back to Penn State or trying to go party, and that's where my focus was. And I didn't take advantage of TBS for the most, and that really hurts me too, right? And I feel like I kind of my confidence started depleting a little bit again, and that was really a tough moment for me through that. I think at the very end, I came to our captain, who was in charge of our TBS platoon. we had a really difficult relationship. I had a couple tough moments in TBS where I did stupid things or did things wrong and got called out. And by the end, I came to him, Captain Blackson, an awesome guy. And at the very end, I just told him, look, I wish I told you in the beginning that I went through this breakup or I was going through something emotionally that I was just having a hard time with. And I wish you told me that earlier, and I wish I really understood and could have got you more help and support. So that was just, I think, a life lesson for me. I never had that circumstance happen, and I came out of it. And so because of that, I think that very much affected what I wanted to do in the Marine Corps. I still, even going through TBS and being so new and not having any previous exposure, really didn't understand kind of like the untold hierarchy of how things work in the Marine Corps, right? Like infantry is always going to be, as they should be, right? They're always going to stand alone, right? They're going to be at the top of the food chain, and that's everybody else is supporting that effort, right? And I didn't understand that even while I was at TBS. I didn't understand that was the cool kids club, right? And so going through TBS, kind of going through the motions was like, hey, I'm just ready to be a reservist. I'm ready to go work in Amazon. I wanted to do a job that got me to Amazon the fastest. That also kind of made sense. And so being a reservist, you actually had a little bit more say of what you wanted to do. And so I just figured logistics makes sense. I start the school literally 3 days after I graduate TBS. It's a 10-week course. And then I'm working for Amazon by June 2017, right? And this is around April, May 2017. Looking back, for sure, I definitely wish I more leaned into the experience there and had a better time. But at the end of the day, it was what definitely was meant supposed to happen, and definitely helped me grow a lot as a person.
It seems like you condensed the transition from the military to civilian. Your transition from military to civilian was very quick from your transition from civilian to military. So like you had this radical shock to the Marine Corps and then abruptly went into Amazon. Like, what was that transition like from the basic school to Amazon?
Yeah, so do the basic school, go to the logistics officer course in Lejeune, the Lejeune area, do that for 10 weeks, and then I start right away for Amazon. Took maybe a week off, and then I started. Definitely, again, a culture shock. I just went through this whole experience, and then I'm going back now working in corporate America. Nothing feels real. I don't know.
Yeah, what was day one of Amazon like?
A shock, for sure. You're with other starting managers, right? Mostly around my age. I was 23 at the time. And beginning, you're just going through they actually have you train and do all the different jobs that Amazon associates do. So picking and packing and shipping, all those jobs. And you're learning. The first week is literally just learning all those jobs and going through that. So first week didn't feel super, super real. Feel like I'm having an identity crisis. I'm wearing the Marine haircut. And obviously I need to because I'm a reservist, but do I actually need to? Because you meet other reservists that have been and they have beards and they don't care and they shave right before drill and that. And I'm taken super seriously because this is literally all I know. And I'm trying to uphold that value a little bit, probably a little bit even too much at times, but felt really strongly about that still. So it's funny how I went from, I want to, get through this point in my life to get to Amazon. And now I'm working at Amazon and, of course, now I'm valuing both. And I'm trying to, sometimes I feel like more of a Marine and sometimes I feel like more of someone who's working as a civilian, right? And going through that and then finally getting acclimated and implemented into the day-to-day at Amazon and realizing what was going on and the day-to-days there, definitely a shock and made me think about what do I actually really want to go do.
And then this was where you decided to go full-time military.
So I start working at Amazon. I go to my first drill as a Marine reservist and I show up and, I'm, part of this unit in Red Bank, New Jersey. And I go and one of the more senior officers there at some point in that weekend comes up to me and he goes, we have to send a officer to a deployment in Central America. You're single with no kids. You're going. And at that point, 2 months into working at Amazon, though I was definitely excited, it was one of those, I just made all these decisions to be a reservist, to start my civilian career, and I'm already being told I got to go deploy. And though, of course, Amazon's going to hold my job for me and such, I'm not going to move up. I'm not going to learn more, right? And so definitely had a bunch of mixed emotions, deciding, do I try to get out of this? What do I do? And, the answer came to, and I realized this is definitely the best experience for me, especially as time went on for Amazon. And so the 5 out of the 7 months I was at Amazon, I knew that I was leaving too. So very interesting experience, but ended up after those 7 months activating for a deployment to Central and South America. And then during that whole workup experience and after, I realized this is where I was meant to be. This is what I want to go do at the place in my life. What makes sense. I'm single. I have nothing holding me back. I'm gaining a lot of confidence. I'm growing, and this is where I should be. And it really.
Let's jam on the deployment. So you're a Marine Corps officer, you're commissioned, you're doing logistics. What were you doing in South America?
So I was signed to be a watch officer. So very more of a general operations job, right? We were deployed to a base in Honduras. It's an American-Honduran joint Air Force base down in central Honduras. Our mission there was mainly HADR, humanitarian assistance, disaster relief. So that region gets hit with different, weather events every single year. And so we had the CH-53s, the heavy lift helicopter of the Marine Corps. So at any point, if there was a natural disaster and somewhere in that region, at some point during that time, one of those government agencies could request us and request our services to go in, clean up the area, remove debris, whatever needed to be done, right? So we partnered with OFTA, USAID, and some of those organizations and learned a lot about that. Did a 3-month, 4-month workup, and then ended up going there. The job was interesting. I learned so much about the Marine Corps. I was very much an officer, that officershipness that you talk about, that doing PowerPoints, and I was working in the headquarters. I was with the CO, the XO of the deployment. We had a central command element, right? And then we had small units all over different countries in Central America and South America. And so my job was retrieving all the information, creating set reps, doing a cub every single day.
What's a cub?
Commander's update brief. So every single day. And our CO, he was awesome. He was colonel. It definitely got to the point where at some point he didn't really care a lot about the content. He cared to make sure that bullets were aligned and headers were all the same font. And
so I want to go back. Like I skipped and I didn't jump in. Yeah. So we met because we worked together at Amazon.
Right.
So you were a leader at Amazon, and then you become a leader in the military over the course of, basically 0 days, which is an odd transition that a lot of like active duty people, the transition's a lot longer and it's not as stark of a contrast. But reservists do this all the time. But it's your first job in one direction, your first job in the other direction. What did leadership look like one versus the other? Did you see a huge disparity, or did the same things work?
First of all, I would say overall, one of the biggest things I learned at Amazon overall, which is how operations actually works. And it's the people in the process, really differentiating the two and knowing that they both work together, right? Because Amazon is a machine, right, in general, and they have incredible equipment and machinery and processes and systems and software in place. But at the end of the day, they are a people-driven operation, and that's at least what we did. People were driving the operation, and so you have to balance those relationships, and you have to get people to buy in to do things to make the operation go. And I think understanding that was really impactful for me, and understanding how operations works. Leadership was interesting there. We had a lot of really great military leadership. You were my first boss there. You made an incredible impact on me. I would like you to give this speech too, really quickly, if you could, because the one speech that you gave me that really made a lot of impact. So every day we had a startup meeting. We'd have a startup meeting with all the associates, right, under your department. And then later in the day, we'd have a manager sync, right? And a lot of times, we'd go through the numbers between the inbound department and the outbound department and just talk about what's going on in that building. And then sometimes they let different people speak or give speeches or give rah-rah. And you gave an awesome speech about you being a sniper and the focus on the front sights.
Oh, that's not sniper, but sure.
But that speech you gave made a big impact on me.
So I'll give a more background on the building, whether you remember this or not. You actually walked into a really difficult situation, and so did I. Before we walked into that building, the general manager of the building got fired for lying to like 4,000 people. And it made the New York Times. And I didn't know that. And so there was a huge distrust from the management to the employees, and they tried to unionize the building.
Mm-hmm.
And Amazon still goes through a struggle of whether that's right for them or not. And when you're in those environments, it's actually really difficult. And I don't know if you fully understood the people problem that they were having, that you walked into one of the hardest people problems that you could possibly have. And so the motivation for everybody was really difficult because the employees did not trust the manager. So you walk in a brand new manager, bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, and they hate you. Like, you are hated. But the thing that you're looking at and the goal that you're looking at, you can't look at three things at the same time. You can only do one thing at the same time. So when you shoot a pistol, you have the target, you have the front sight focus, you have the rear sight. And both the target and the rear sights are supposed to be blurry. You're supposed to be locked in and do the thing that you need to do at that one moment. You can't get distracted even by your target. Your target is a distraction. Your rear sights are a distraction. The only thing that you need to look at is the front sight. The best shooters in the world with a pistol are actually only looking at the front sight. And so when you focus on one thing, you only do one thing. And you do one thing at a time, and you do the most important thing. And you have to decide what it is, and you have to rack and stack it. So in our lives, we are always front sight focus. And anytime that you're trying to do two things at once, you're not. So only do one thing at a time.
Do that one thing as well as you can.
With reckless abandon.
Unwavering focus.
Right.
Do that.
And it turns out if you do that, you'll be very successful.
And I think that with Amazon, similar to where we are here, where there's so many things going on at once, there's so many things to manage at once, there's a lot under your umbrella, that learning that then of you got to do the thing that's in front of you. You got to go knock that out instead of being so overwhelmed. And then you end up just talking about the thing or getting concerned about the thing instead of actually doing the thing. Right. And I think that is what I really learned at Amazon. Just a little bit. Just go do the thing. Right. Go do it. Go do the job that needs to get done instead of talking about it, complaining about it, try to get out of it. And so it being such a high tempo environment, always something going on. It's like, what can we do something that's going to move the needle or do something, make an impact right now, right? Amazon, a big morale issue for sure throughout that building, as Rob mentioned. So me, still learning the operation, learning how things actually work, where can I go find value? Where can I go make an impact? Was go to try to cheer people up, right? And go try to make people, raise the morale, go try to make a positive impact on people. And I really focus on the people rather than the process at that time. That really was where my focus lied. So Rob remembers so many times of me doing these beat the manager power hours and doing, I will, I'm going to pick around the building all the, as many items as I can. Whoever beats me gets free Chick-fil-A, and I'll go buy them Chick-fil-A or Taco Bell or pizza or whatever, and just find some type of inspiration and motivation for people.
I would also get in trouble when you bought stuff for the people,
but it was worth it.
I didn't care.
It was worth it. It made the environment better. It made it more fun. I was the guy taking a speaker going into the pick alleys just to, because you couldn't walk around with music and there was no music playing in the building, just to try to boost morale or try to brighten someone's day. That's really what I wanted to do. And so I really gave a focus of it's about the people, especially in an operation that big.
So Mike Lowinger is the party. You showed up. And, I mean, it wasn't even a shadow of a doubt that they did it to the point where the building was in trouble, and the shift that I was on was like a bunch of really good people, and we were able to. It was really competitive, the shifts with each other. Some would backstab. So like one of my goals was to prevent that, influence them to behave all in the same way, work better as a team. But they would see managers on team, and people would try to steal other managers. And we had a pretty good one. And you ended up getting stolen from me because they saw it wasn't, and you didn't necessarily know the process, but you could go into a difficult situation and people would follow. And a lot of it was the party, and it was that, but I think it was more your heart. The story that you tell me in college where you felt it was your fault that you got robbed, no, it was not your fault. But those lessons that you learned and how you wear your heart and how you try to change the people that you're around, everyone follows. And when you lead with your heart and you do those things, it's infectious. You have infectious positivity that people follow. And because you show your heart, like people like fall in love with you. And so that was something that I identified immediately, that you are the party, but you're the heart, and like people follow that.
I really appreciate it. It made the experience positive overall. Felt like that's where I needed to be. And I just owned that. I owned that lane. I felt like that's where I was making the impact. Knowing too a little bit that, okay, my time's ticking here. I'm not going to be here that long. And I'm just going to fully lean into this. And when we're in the peak season and you're at the most stressful times, is I'm just going to go do what I think is best and what I'm going to make the best impact.
Let's roll with this. So like we'll skip over the military stuff just for time's sake.
Yeah.
Like on Rob's riff there, you were kind of vital, like in the beginning when we were building out the ZOC, the Zero Eyes Operations Center. So like you had the Amazon experience, you had the Marine logistics experience, you met Rob, you had a lot of stuff in the military that I don't know if we have the time to go into, but then reunited with Zero Eyes. So you have a really cool experience with this corporate military, and then you came in super early in a high risk, high growth tech VC backed startup with a massive goal. Let's jump in there wherever you guys think is best and let's talk about the ZOC.
I do think that part of the military, if you just do it real quick, what did you do next? And like at some given point in the company, I said they're like, we need somebody to build an operations center. And I was like, dude, there's this guy that I worked with at Amazon who was the heart and soul that I loved. He is the right guy. And I called you and you didn't call me back for 2 weeks. What were you doing?
So very end of being on active orders for 2 years after working at Amazon, I was at an inflection point too of, okay, what do I want to go do next? Saw into doing different things in the Marine Corps, but I was kind of limited based off my reserve contract, and I'd had to transfer to active duty and go through a song and dance before I could go try to do a job or a career that I wanted to go do. Someone informed me about trying Army SF, trying the National Guard, being a reserve contract. It gave me the ability to go try to do that.
SF, Special Forces, Green Beret.
Right. Special Forces, go try to be a Green Beret. And so that was...
As a Marine officer.
So at the end of 2019 and the 2020, I connected with a point of contact at a National Guard unit in Florida, an SF, Special Forces National Guard unit there. They take people in to go through a screening process. Basically, you go through a couple weekends or a couple iterations of going through a simulation of what Special Forces assessment and selection is going to be like. And they basically are trying to sponsor you to see if you're someone that they think you can make it through. Because the difference between active duty, Special Forces, and National Guard is active duty, they'll put you in whichever group they think is best. National Guard, you basically go tied to a unit. And when you come back through all your training, you go back to that unit. And so they'll take people in other branches. They'll take people in the active component or, other Army units. They'll take civilians and give them the contract. And so I sought that opportunity, got to go to those screeners, ended up getting, passing those screeners, and they gave me the opportunity to go to Special Forces selection.
But if we're going to go this road, let's go this road right.
Okay.
Why did you want to become a Green Beret? Is this like part of the self-flagellation? Like,
I think
what
so.
was the decision point?
I think so. So I go through the 2 years of being on active orders and have an awesome experience. At the same time, I felt like the job that I was doing, I was missing something. I had an awesome experience as a watch officer and learned a lot. And I feel like I did really well in that role. And then I moved to being a logistics officer in Rota, Spain for a deployed unit out there and just being there for a year. And through that, I felt like I just wasn't getting what I wanted to get out of the Marine Corps. My mentality changed. Oh, I wish I did this instead. I wish I did that.
Put some concrete to it. Did you want to go to war? Did you want to fight? Did you want to...
Right.
What did you want?
I wanted that sense of accomplishment. I wanted to be in the fight. I wanted that sense of, I went to war. I made some really big impact. I wanted that sense of physical accomplishment. Like I did something really, really hard. I went through really, really hard training, and like even just going through OCS did at the time, I felt like that was the next evolution for me. I want to do something that's really hard that not a lot of people do, and to go do something good. And I felt like that's where my calling was. It all felt like it was coming together. I was in the best physical shape I could possibly be in. And so I got a lot of confidence from the Marines I served with, and they were incredible Marines, and they were giving me yes, you can go do this. And they were giving me the confidence to go after it, and felt like I was, they weren't going to hold me back. They were being real with me. Like, you can go do this. And so that was the next chip on my shoulder. I need to go do something that's more, right? I felt like I served a lot of people that did incredible things, and I didn't, and I needed to go do that. And so sought out the National Guard unit, ended up going through the screeners, get accepted to go to SFAS on their tab. The one thing was working out with the Marine reservist. It was nothing short of a drug deal where they allowed me to go to Special Forces selection on Marine orders, unpaid Marine orders. So I got paid $0 the whole time with the SF unit sponsoring me. So such a weird situation, but and it was really stressful. I didn't know at times that I was going to be able to even just go, but then I got my shot. I got my opportunity. So was supposed to end up going in March 2020, but then COVID, they pushed the first Special Forces class, that people outside of Fort Bragg could go to May 2020, ended up going to that class. I was there with 300-ish people. There was 298 people in Army uniform. There was one dude in an Air Force uniform and me in a Marine uniform. And it was really hoorah.
At least you're the best uniform in the life.
Yeah, exactly. Nice, and I stood out. I was the Marine the whole time. And there was a lot of guys that were prior Marine Corps that had to transfer to the National Guard or Army to actually go to SFAS. But me being that Marine Reserve officer contract just gave me a lot of weird flexibility and workaround, and I pushed my way there and I got there. So go to Special Force selection, have an overall good experience. Definitely hard, definitely a big challenge. I definitely was up for the task, for the physical challenge, and felt like I performed really well. In the middle of it is a land nav portion where you're doing a lot of land nav. I was near the end of that land nav portion, and on one of the last days where you're doing a really long iterations of land nav, I'm at the last point that I needed to get for that day, within range, terrain associating all the way. And I get to that point, all right, I'm going to go directly to that point, right? So I look at my map, I orient myself. I'm like, all right, I'm here. I need to go here. I put my rifle down for a second because you had to have a fake rifle on you.
A rubber ducky, sometimes referred to as.
A rubber ducky at all times.
I'm assuming you didn't wear a sling because I wanted you to actually physically carry it.
Didn't wear a sling, not allowed to wear a sling. I put it down for a second. I put two hands on my compass and I start going directly to and realized I forgot to pick up my rifle. And
how long until you realized that? How far did you get?
There was only about 30, 40 minutes left in that really long evolution. And I remembered it with 10 minutes left, with 10, 15 minutes left. I was probably within 100 or so meters of my point. And then I tripped over a tree and I fell and I realized I didn't have my rubber ducky to break my fall. And that was the most devastating moment, one of the most devastating moments I've ever had in my life, where felt like I was doing so well and I was so close to accomplishing that goal. And then out of nowhere, I was just destroyed and I'm freaking out. It's really hot in the middle of the summer in the Carolinas and I'm running all over the place to try to go find it. Right. And, the time's running up and at some point you have to be on a road to get picked up. And I was like, all right, I have 30 minutes to go try to do this. I'm running around in circles and I completely just was out of it and just couldn't find it. And at some point had to give up, had to give in and realize reality. And so I go to the road, I turn myself right in when I get there and said I lost my rifle. Doesn't matter how good you're doing at that point, you're out, right? I get dropped. I go to Tent City, which is a terrible place to be, which is all the people who get dropped from selection.
Limbo.
Yeah, stinks. Was there. And one thing that, over that time, those 2 days that I was there, what I felt like were a lot of confident people that something happened to them, that they got dropped. And also you heard the stories in selection of people there a second time, people there a third time, and feeling like they're doing well and having the confidence. And so though I was very, very defeated, I did get built up a little bit more back in the day or two, like, okay, I can come back here. I'm going to go do this thing again. So I go and they basically tell you, are you allowed to return or you're not allowed to return? And they give you a time when you can return. They gave me a 6-month return. So it's June 2020 now. I didn't have my phone for about a month and I'm finally leaving Fort Bragg and I'm like, okay, I'm going to come back here. I'm going to come back here in around 6 months. I haven't had my phone in a month. I'm finally off the campus, the place we're supposed to be. And I turned my phone on and I hadn't talked to Rob in about 2.5 years, two and a half years. And I turned my phone on and I got a text from Rob that says, hey man, what are you up to these days? And it's probably mid-June and he texted me May 31st. So I didn't get back to him for 2 weeks. And I text him, freaking out like, oh my God, I can't believe you're texting me. XYZ thing just happened to me. And he just goes, dude, calm down and call me when you get the chance, right? Call me, tomorrow or something. So I had to drive all the way to, I think it's called Fort Andrews or whatever is in the Savannah, Georgia area. Had to drive all the way from Fort Bragg down there to get my car. It's like middle of the night. And I'm deciding even in that point, my mom was still in Jersey. My dad and stepmom are living in Florida. I didn't even know where I was going to drive to. And I was just made the decision, I haven't been home in Jersey in a while. I'm going to go drive up and go see my mom. And I just made that decision. So I start driving around midnight. I stop on the side of the highway to sleep for 2-3 hours. I start driving the rest of the way to Jersey. Get in touch with Rob in the morning. He calls me at, 8, 9, something like that in the morning. We're on the phone, reconnecting for the first time, spilling my life story and what happened to me for 2.5 years. I'm listening to him making breakfast with his kids in the background. It sounds like absolute chaos. And at some point, I just tell him, so I'm now going to go, my plan is to go back to selection around 6 months. And he's like, and I told him, in the meantime, I'm just looking for a job. I was thinking about being a firefighter or doing something in that regards, right? Because a lot of the guys at SFAS, especially the National Guard guys, a lot of former firefighters, and they just really inspired me. They're so crafty. They have so many skills. And I was really thinking that's something that I want to go do, right? I didn't really have a plan to go work in corporate America or have a normal job. And he said, well, I'm calling you because I have a job for you. And he talked a little bit about it. And he said, hey, come into the office next week. If you're already driving back to Jersey, you're going to be in the Philly area. So I get back home. 3 days later, I go to the Pennovation Center where Zero Eyes was, reintroduced to Rob after not seeing him for a long time, met Mike and met some of the team there, got started on understanding what this was. And at that point, I said, yeah, I'll go do this. I'll go and start this up, right? And really didn't know what I was getting into. Really still in the mindset I'm going to go back and go to selection. And
I said you could.
I
said that you could do it.
We even whiteboard one day what my timeline's going to be. Okay, you're going to keep working here. You're going to go back to SFAS then, etc. Right? And so that was the start of me at Zero Eyes. And the whole time in the beginning, I was very much focused on going back to selection. But, over time, after, 4, 5, 6 months of really becoming, implemented in a part of what we were doing, I really realized this is where I'm supposed to be. This happened for a reason. I felt like I was the perfect person at the perfect time in life with a very unique experience that made sense for what this was, and everything just aligned in that moment. And a couple months in, I just really realized this was that butterfly effect in my own world of this is where I'm supposed to be.
And what was great too is if you're going to do no cost orders to go do something really terrible, then our payment package at the time, probably, it was better than not.
Yeah, it was a little better.
Not much.
It was a little better. It was definitely a little better.
I think it's good. A moment of forgetting your rope or ducky got you in Zero Eyes, if you think about it.
It is. And I'm so thankful for it.
Yeah.
It made me realize that ego aside, go be great where you're planted, go do the thing, go take advantage of every opportunity. And it may not be in what you think in your story of what you're supposed to go do, but it's actually what you're supposed to go do, right? Sometimes is where you are, where you're positioned to be. And I felt like in my mind, I had to go slay the dragon still. And I need to go back and I need to go prove something to myself. And I realized I am so perfectly positioned for this job right now and my experience and what this is, and that I can go do something great by being here and make a big impact. And that's where I felt like I needed to be.
So I grew up with the same kind of thing, go slay the dragon. And I think we're so fortunate to have you. You didn't slay the dragon, instead you built the castle. And
nice.
It's pretty cool to build a castle when you weren't expecting it. So you built our operations team. You came in, you did it with heart, you did it with soul, you did it with grit, you did it with perseverance. You never took your sight off the front sight. And now that you kind of get to look at it bigger, it's turned into something that like our operation centers here in Hawaii, we're already outgrowing a building that we just built. We're probably going to have to do this a lot bigger, and you're the person that did it. You were the right person at the right time.
The best part about this whole experience has truly been the people. Something that started at Amazon to me and has gone over to here. It's all about building up people. And to build up people, you need to align incentive for the company and for the people, right? Truly, this whole experience has been, if you do this, if you work hard, if you gain skill, you're going to be better and we're going to be better. And that's what the best part about this whole experience has been. We're doing something on a mission that's so incredible. And on the way, everybody is continuing to be better, become better people for it. And to me, that's been where my heart has been, is if we just continue to build people up and make people better, our operation actually gets better. If you actually focus on that first. And that's really what the focus has been, and making sure that everybody's taken care of and everybody feels like they're getting better. And in turn, our service is going to be get better, and we're going to continue to grow and be able to do this thing for a long time.
Yeah, I imagine impact was part of it too. So like you didn't slay one dragon, you slayed 1,000 dragons. Every week we're getting detections in the operating center you help build, and that is impactful. And that has downstream consequences that are going to ripple for years. It's been great stuff, man.
It means a lot. I'm so thankful to be a part of this journey. I understand how lucky I am and the right place and right time I was in life to take that call and to come here, and the relationship having with Rob. And that's why I'm able to look at a big picture. You know, I didn't go do infantry. I didn't do special forces, right? But all those decisions I made truly led to here and led to this mission that we're going to be able to go save lives and make a really big impact on the world. And again, if I wasn't a logistics officer, if I wasn't a reservist, even all those decisions felt like they beat me up for a really long time. None of those, if I didn't do all those things, I wouldn't be here, right? And I understand that, and I am just so fortunate and grateful. And that's why I don't feel as way about the military as some people do. I had an interesting experience and overall a good experience as some others may have, and I'm very lucky for that too. I didn't do what I thought I needed to do or wanted to do, and in turn, it was what needed to happen.
I mean, this is a nice upbeat note. And Rob, you want to add any heavy things before we get into the closers?
I'll add one heavy thing. We're sitting in an office that is next to our operations center. There's a glass window, and then you're looking out. Look at the glass window right now. You changed her life. And you did it by teaching her and giving her an opportunity. And how many people have you promoted out of that room? So like, I can just see people working who are in positions that are about 5 positions that they could have never dreamed of because you lifted them up. You taught them something and you gave them a career path. So how many people have you promoted out of that room?
It's about 20.
About 20 people. I couldn't be any more excited about what the future is, and I couldn't be any more thankful that you said yes.
It's the best thing that ever happened to me. It truly was. I do feel the impact that I'm making. And again, it's all about the people. That is what keeps us going. It's aligning everybody together. You can't have one without the other. You can't have the people without the process, and vice versa. And so you find a way to build people up. They're going to do great things for you, right? And they're going to become better for it. They're not just doing something because it needs to get done. They're doing something that needs to get done, but in turn, they are becoming more skilled, more marketable, better people. And that to me is what it's all about. That's what gets us to our mission. That's what gets us to success, is building people up.
I love it. All right, let's pivot. We'll close it out with 2 or 3 quick questions. Book that changed your life.
How to Win Friends and Influence People.
I did not expect you to say that. Interesting.
That book, I really feel like everybody should read. You know, I don't think it taught me anything that I didn't already really know. It just affirmed a lot. How you treat people. And again, it does talk about, you know, managing relationships, building people up, you know, aligning people, aligning incentive, and really understanding that. And that's what I took away, at least from the book. And I really feel like every leader, every young leader especially, should go read that and understand that's how you treat people. You don't want to tell someone to do things. You want to make them want to do things. And there's a way to word what you say to make that happen, right?
Favorite television show?
My favorite show is Suits. The characters there are so good. I really resonate with characters in the show as opposed to the storyline, and, you know, look up to the people on those shows and the characters. And to me, they're just so good in that show.
Thank you for being on the team. Thank you for building what you've built. Thank you for saying yes.
Thank you for everything you guys have done for me. Excited for what's to come. The best is yet to come.
Glad to know you, man. Thanks for jumping on.
Thank you, guys.
Appreciate it. That's it for this episode. If you want to check out more from the podcast, head to zeroeyes.com/Nobel, where you can see show notes, read more about our guests, and suggest guests or topics of your own. Until next time, stay in the fight. Don't ring the bell.